It's good to see you. Welcome to another edition of Bible Shorts with Biblebob. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, which I encourage you to go there and subscribe to, please, and tell somebody else to hit the button, you'll be able to see that I'm in an area that has some tops in the distance. There's like barrenness out here. So where I'm at is like the Camp Verde area in Arizona, where there's salt flats and old salt mines no longer in operation. But while I was on my way up here, driving up before I had to hike to the trailhead, I saw some signs that said danger, keep out, no admittance, or you'll die. It didn't say that, but that's the point. There were salt pits that people can fall into. It's dangerous. So out here, you can look at some of the plateaus, and you can look in the distance and almost see where it's like a barren top of a mountain. So today's Bible story is about salt. More directly or exactly, a lady that was turned into a pillar of salt. She doesn't have a name. All we know her is by Lot's wife. And so we'll talk about Lot for a little bit. But where we started from, as far as this discussion, I was teaching this morning in Camp Verde United Christian School, our debate class. And our BIRT, which is a B-I-R-T, means be it resolved that. So then there's a statement. If you agree with that, you're in the affirmative, and you disagree, you're in the negative. The statement was, Lot's wife didn't deserve to die, or Lot's wife didn't deserve to be turned into a pillar of salt. So in terms of discussion, it could be relative, it could be contrasted, it could be wrong, it could be right. That's why we debate. We do the research, come up with some opinions, and see where we go. So when we looked at it today, looking at the whole scenario of where Lot came from, where he was going, and then the history of the future, and even touching on the lineage of Christ, which we touched on a previous podcast, here's the Bible verse that we're starting with. It's in Genesis 19:26, and it says, and Lot's wife turned around and turned into a pillar of salt. So, and we could point to she disobeyed the command of God, because when you go back to verse 17, there's two angels that show up, and these two angels give a directive from God. They say, neither look back or stop on the plain. So what's behind me down low could be considered a plain, and there are mountainous areas around here. There's caves in a distance. You cannot see them from here, but over the last yonder hill, there are caves over there. So there's caves, there's flat land, but the directive is given from God through the angels. Don't look around, don't turn around and look, and don't stop on the plain. You probably got to figure that if you're going to turn around, you got to stop and turn around. So Lot's wife, she's done. Did she deserve to die? It's interesting. So let's go back to some of the things we know about Lot himself, the husband and the father of these two girls, because only 4 people left, but we'll get there. So Abraham, who was a guy in his old age with his old wife, they have a young kid, even in their old age. He's 99 years old having a kid. That's hot. That's hope for the rest of us. Not really, but there's always hope for a new birthing from the Holy Spirit within us. Mark that down. So they have a child in old age. Abraham now, he's traveling across. He's going to promised land and going to all these, not the promised land, but he's headed that way to lead people who will eventually go there. And so he's with his nephew Lot. And Lot and Abraham, they all of a sudden have too many cows and pigs and goats and sheep, too many possessions. So Abraham says, we need to split up. There's just too much for one plot of land. So you know what? You look out and you take whatever you want, Lot. You take the best, and I'll go the other way. So Lot looks out. He sees a lush green valley. He sees the area of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he goes that way. So Lot goes there. Abraham goes another way. There's some other things that happen. But to get to the main part of where we need to go with this story, all of a sudden, Sodom and Gomorrah is this nasty place. We find at one point that God tells Abraham he's going to destroy it. And Abraham gets into a debate with God. He says, God, if you find at least 50 righteous people, now the word righteous is in right standing with God. And I don't really know that that's a lasting thing that we go through, but it's more of the sum of our lives. Because if God can call certain people righteous, and we knew some of the nasties that they did, The righteousness must be the sum of the entirety of their whole life in terms of moral decisions, and not zoned in on one bad mistake. So back to Lot. So Lot's in his house, and all of a sudden, and we find that he's at the town square or the city square. The city square is a place where where the leaders would go, maybe the mayor of a city, the leaders would go, people that were recognized as leaders, they would hang out. Decisions were made, debates were happened, and agreements, covenants, and all those things were ratified at the city gate. Lot is there. He sees two guys come in. They turned out to be angels. God sends them. And Lot says, oh, you can't stay here in the city square. You must come to my house. And he's kind of inferring that bad things happen to people who stay out in the open because this is a bad city. So finally, the angels go into his house. The people of Sodom and Gomorrah surround Lot's house. Bring the men out that you put into your house. We want to have sex with them. It's like, this is like perversion to the max. Fast forward in the story, Lot says, oh no, my brothers, you must not do such a wicked thing. But here's my two daughters who have never known a man. Because they were guests in his house. So the story goes on. The girls never go out, but the angels tell him that you must take your sons, your sons in law, your wife, and your daughters, and you must flee this place because God is going to destroy it. So Lot goes and tells the boys, the sons and son in laws, and they laugh, thinking it's a joke. They don't go. So whoever's in Lot's house, 4 pair of hands, so to speak, go throughout. The angels grab the hands of Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters, and they flee. Now we get to the point God starts raining things down. All of a sudden, things are being destroyed. Lot's wife turns around. Boop! She turns into a pillar of salt, and that's it. She's there. So Lot and his 2 daughters, they want to go to one place. God was going to send them to another. And all of a sudden, they're going to go to a place called Zor. And he says, no, let's go to a cave. They go to a cave. And then history will tell us that scholars believe that the girls believed that there was no other man left on the face of the earth, that God had either destroyed the whole earth or was about to do it. And the only man left was their dad. And so they get him drunk. each one on successive nights have sex with him, they get pregnant, and they have babies. So, and when I mentioned in class that the ugliness of Lot was, I guess the way I read it, offering up his daughters to be raped, eventually was raped by his daughters. And that's like an ew moment, is what the students said. They just said, ew. And it's like, it doesn't get much more ew than that. What I do know is God can take our worst ew moments and turn them into something beautiful. So back to, did Lot's wife deserve to die for being a pillar of salt in the face of a man who was willing to give up his own daughters to perverts? It just doesn't make any sense. But God had a greater plan, and sometimes we're not maybe going to know the whole answer, but what happened in the end, the two boys that were born to the two girls born from this incestuous relationship, they were the head of the tribes, the Moabites and the Ammonites, who were two peoples that God forbidden intermarrying with, that they were like enemies of the Israelites. However, in the Moabites, we talked about it before, a lady named Ruth was a Moabite who married the son of a lady named Naomi and her husband Elimelech, and then all the boys died. Naomi, who had left Bethlehem to go to the land of Moab because there was a famine, and all of a sudden the famine in Bethlehem is done, the boys are dead. Naomi takes Ruthie. Well, Ruthie decides to go. Ruthie says things like, your God will be my God, and let nothing but death ever separate us. Ruthie goes back, meets a guy named Boaz, and that's the lineage of Christ. So out of an ew, God moves and inserts it into the lineage of Christ. And one of the biggest reasons I find out of it, you'll find that in Luke chapter, I think it's 17, that Jesus says, remember Lot's wife being a pillar of salt. He calls that out. So a pillar is a marking point. At this marking point, when you turn around to look at something from your past with longing and desire for a sin that you committed, though repentant and maybe sorry for, but admit to yourself, yeah, it was wrong, but I kind of enjoyed that. That's kind of the longing that we can kind of guess that the unnamed wife of Lot looked back on. The longing. You look into the Hebrew, a great work to study is the new is the Blue Letter Bible. I'm sorry. It's a book that I have open every morning on my app on my phone. You find the old Hebrew words and it takes you a deeper study. So I'm going to leave you with this. There are things in life that are so ugly that they gain our attention, and then God speaks. I invite you to watch a God story that I did yesterday with the Flagstaff City Councilwoman, Lori Matthews. She talked about a God story, how God got a hold of her. It's like a burning bush moment that God used to get a hold of Moses. He didn't speak to Moses until he had Moses' attention through a burning bush. God took Lori Matthews and didn't really give the plan for her future until he had her full undivided attention. Sometimes it's the ugliest of situations that do happen in life, sad to say, that get our attention, and things have to, almost like a kernel of wheat has to die before it's born again. So God takes us to the limit of ugliness in ourselves, almost to say, you know what? This is how ugly you can be. Let me show you how beautiful it can be if you follow me. So one last story here today. We talked about a man who put a stone in the road. I found it in The Moral Compass, put together by William Bennett. Great book, a lot of great stories. So there was this king, and he wanted to test the character of the people in the land. So he put a huge stone in the middle of the road. So he just took the stone, middle of the road. So, and he hides behind a bush. So first, a farmer comes along. He's pulling his cart. He's got his donkeys. He's going to market, and all of a sudden he sees the rock. Oh, the heck put that rock there? That stupid, lazy people. Why would they leave a rock in the middle of the road? And he promptly takes his cart, goes around the rock, and then here comes a soldier. And his soldier's walking along, and it's starting to get dark, and he's whistling along. He's all happy. He's thinking about how he's going to go to war and be a hero, and he's got his shining sword and everything else. He trips over the rock. all of a sudden his happiness is gone. Stupid people trip me up on my way to go being a hero. And other people come. Other people say, well, who left that rock there? Who put that lazy rock there? Or who's a lazy person who left it there? And then it really starts to get dark. A young girl comes by. She had been working her fingers to the bones from morning until night, getting up early. She was like a seamstress. And all of a sudden she sees the rock and she thinks to herself, well, I better move that rock because if somebody in the dark may not see it, they might trip and they possibly could get hurt. So she struggles and struggles and struggles and pushes and pulls and finally gets the rock off the road. But you see, after the rock had been moved, there was a box underneath, and the box had a note. It said, whoever moves this rock, this box is your gift. She opens it up and it's gold. And then all the people hear about it. And you know, all the people that had gone over that rock, they came looking at the spot where the rock was to see if there was any more gold dust that was on that spot. The point was, when an opportunity is in front of you, you need to take it. When God puts an opportunity, it could be ugliness, it could be a burning bush, it could be a supernatural occurrence of all of a sudden red fluid all over your yellow shirt. God uses things to get our attention. He can take all of the worst yous and turn them into something so beautiful. So that's all we got for today. Hey, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Tell your friends about it. Share this podcast video. And thanks for your time. Go do something nice for somebody. Jesus loves you, so do we. See ya.